Fabulous. Great. Well, welcome. I'm going to take the first couple minutes to introduce myself and talk about this program we are running here and allow people to log on if they're still lagging a little bit behind. My name is Gabrielle Tillenberg. I'm the exhibitions coordinator at Strathmore, and we are conducting virtual artist talks while we are in quarantine and under the current conditions of the pandemic, as a way to keep connected with artists who we have exhibited at Strathmore in the past. And I'm so happy to be joined today by Shana Kohnstamm, who is here. I'll pin her video so you can see her in her lovely studio. Shana joined us at Strathmore exhibiting through the Creative Crafts Council. The Creative Crafts Council runs a biennial exhibition, and their next show will be in our upcoming season at the end of the year. And they bring together some of the most excellent artists and crafts makers in the area. And I think one of the important parts of the conversation the conversation presented by that exhibition is how fine art is absolutely inclusive of some craft materials. And so Shana's working with fiber as her material and through the means of sculpture. So Shana, can you explain to everybody what your artistic process is and what it is that you do?
Sure. We have 4 days for that? Sure. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to Gabrielle. Thank you for the Strathmore, for everybody that is live with me right now, folks that are going to be watching this later. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. So I started using wool as my main medium about 10 years ago. I was a painter beforehand, professional painter, both in galleries, and also I painted backdrops for sets, and for a job I painted houses inside, outside. So you'll see in my sculptures a lot of color is used because I'm driven by color. But when I found wool, I've been taking a lot of classes in different mediums. I find that when I learn a new process, when I learn a new technique or a new skill, it helps inform my personal work. And I was really surprised that felting stuck. And so the first class I took was a 2-day wet felting course. Wet felting is done with sheep's wool, hot soapy water, agitation, and you can build anything from sculptures to slippers and yurts. Like, it runs the gamut in terms of what you can make with the textile. And then I had leftover wool, and somebody suggested that I try needle felting, which I had no idea what it was. And slowly, this was before anything was on YouTube, I started to pick up the technique and then combined the two techniques together, which I just find so delightful. So my studio used to have paint stuff in it, and as I was learning more about the wool and the possibilities of it, my painting equipment sort of moved over to half of the room, and then into a corner of the room, and then into the closet, and now it is in storage. So I have just found so much joy with being able to sculpt and almost paint at the same time using this fiber.
Yeah, I can absolutely see how that translates, particularly in your use of color. And I want to take the opportunity, I'll be sharing my screen now to share some images of your work. And we'll get a chance to see some that are present in your space, because I think scale is really interesting. We have so many different, oh, sorry, I want to make sure we've got someone, perfect, someone in the waiting room. Sorry about that. Had to admit them there. So in this piece in particular, I see so much of of the structures that you use. Can you talk about sort of what is inside these works? And this piece in particular, called As Tall as I Am, is very large, like yourself. So I imagine working with very large works, the internal structure is very important. So could you talk about what goes into that?
Sure, sure. So As Tall as I Am, as you can imagine, is as tall as I am. I happen to be 5'1", so it's 5'1". That's how tall it is. And this is a piece that is primarily wool. I would say it's 97% wool. And the only structure that's actually on the inside is at the very bottom. If you'll scroll all the way down to the bottom, the little curls. So I wanted those to curl up because I had actually made the piece too long and it was taller than I was. So I needed it to curl up. So I put some floral wire in there and curled them up that way. But most of the time, it's primarily wool as a structure. It holds together so beautifully well, and it can be very, very dense and still lightweight. The piece you have up right now, Apostrophe, is about 4 feet tall, and it has some wire at the very base where it touches the wall because I knew I wanted it to be able to hang on a single picture frame hook. So this whole piece, even though it's nearly 4 feet tall, is only 5 pounds. And then there is some wire in the hair, but just to give it enough structure so that it comes out from the body of the head. But most of the time I am working, primarily in wool and then adding wire if I need it. I don't necessarily start with wire. Go ahead.
I was going to say, see, I think that's for me so remarkable and fascinating because in looking at those structures, I'm then reminded, if you tell me there's no wire inside, the strength of the fiber itself and the qualities of the fiber are really remarkable that allow you to achieve this.
It's an amazing medium. When I was a kid, I played in clay. I walked into my first clay class when I was 5. I stayed in there for 10 years. But I was always frustrated because I'd make something, I'd get really messy, and maybe it would blow up in the kiln. A lot of times my stuff blew up in the kiln, or if it survived the first firing, when you go to put the glaze on, the glazes are gray, and you hope it's pink, and you put on a different color gray, and you hope it's yellow, and so I didn't have that immediate color to surface. And if I can show you in just a second, I want to show you one of the pieces I'm working on as an example.
Sure, let's back to your screen just a second.
Yeah. So I've actually got a little screen here at my studio. I want to make sure that I can see it too.
Yep, got it up.
Okay, fabulous. So this is a piece that I'm working on as an example for a student that I'm teaching via web right now. So you can see this is, I'm going to hold it next to my head. I don't know if you can see my head too. Yeah.
Yep, there you go.
All right, so it's pretty big. I just want you to get the scale as I put it down. So this is all the white wool. It's the core wool right here. There's nothing else in it, and it's pretty solid. So it probably weighs about the same as maybe a can of soup. It's not quite a pound. And now I'm covering it. So as I'm teaching my student about different surface designs, I'm working along with her. So there are just a couple things that I've added on right now. If I wanted to put wire in it, if I wanted to give it legs, then I can add as I go. If I wanted to cut it in half, it's really, really easy to manipulate. And that's one of the things that I love about this medium. It's so versatile. It's so generous. And it heals very well, meaning that if I cut it, I can work those edges right back in and there's nothing lost. There's so little waste. So you can tell, I get really excited when I talk about wool.
I get excited to watch you talk about wool. We were talking a little bit offline, or I mean online, but just not with everyone listening, about some of the research that you've done into wool and how that's affected.
Yeah.
So could you maybe tell a bit about, and then also I'd love to hear about that in relationship to your residency that you were at recently.
Sure. Yeah. So just a little bit about the wool. I've been using it for 10 years now. What is fascinating to me is that when I was a painter, it never crossed my mind to think about where my paints came from where my canvas came from, where my brushes came from, not only like literally where they were shipped in from, but what they were made of. And here I have the opportunity to meet the sheep. So it's sort of a farm to gallery, a farm, hopefully, you know, a farmed mansion, a farm, wherever it is, that I can go be on the land with the animals. They have to be shared anyway, so it is, it's a win-win for both the farm and for me. A lot of times these certain sheep breeds, they've got to be sheared anyway. If there's not a buyer for the wool, they'll trash the wool, they'll burn it, they'll throw it into the land. And so the fact that I can be part of this system now, where it's usable for me, and not only am I helping the sheep, the farmer, and that system, but also I've done a little more research in the last year about the American wool mills that sort of collapsed. That whole system collapsed after World War II because of the use of synthetic materials. And so all of these wool mills just went out of business. And it's really the crafters right now and the makers that are helping support and regenerate some of that lost economy. And so it's made me think about like where I'm buying, how close to home can I get my wool. And we're in a lovely, I mean, here in Maryland, Virginia, there are a lot of sheep farms. So it's really exciting to be able to go and meet the farmers and know that they're getting milled locally, that it's supporting the economy. And it's just, there's so much more to it than just making the art with it now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so in terms of my residency, I spent the first 3 weeks of March in Finland, and I was able to purchase Finnish wool locally and have it delivered to my residency. Unfortunately, because things started to get a little weird while I was there, the residency was cut short, and I did not get to visit the sheep farms in that area. But I had a fabulous time. I worked my little tush off while I was there, and produced some pieces that I'm really excited about exploring a little bit more.
Fantastic. Yeah, I am so grateful that you had the opportunity to go, even if it was cut short. It seemed timed at least to give you some time there. And I'm excited to see what comes of that. I know that you are, you know, working in new directions as well. So since we have this really privileged peek into your space, I was hoping you could maybe grab a few pieces and show everyone. Maybe we should start with Strata. I think we saw that one as an image, but I think for scale, it's lovely to see.
Oh, Kata.
Oh, Kata, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and the Kata is one of those pieces that just kept growing. So yeah, let me grab that. So Kata started off with just a mass in the center, about puppy size, because I was craving a puppy. And it started to grow and just screamed, I want legs, I want legs. So I had to actually cut into the structure, make sure that this is actually a concrete wire, and sew it in. And then only once it had legs, it's all done in that core wool, that white wool. I did a little sketch to make sure that I would get my colorways right. And then I actually dye the roving, the outside skin here in my house to make sure that I have exactly the colors that I want. And I want to do a little promo. This piece is actually going to be available through the Washington Projects of the Arts. They're going to have their auction is now a sale. It'll be on Artsy at the beginning of June. So this one's reserved, but it is available. Let me put this down.
Congratulations on getting your piece in there. I would also love to ask if you've got, if you can bring up some representational work too, because I think it's really great to see.
Yeah, actually I have this fantastic piece that I made in Finland. So this is, get a little glare on her. I'm gonna bring her face up really close.
There we go.
And she's got her petal head. So while I was in Finland, one of the themes of that residency was meditation. And so she's sitting in a meditative stance. I rarely do white pieces. You know, I like the color, but this was so beautiful. And I have, I got to take a picture of this sitting on a stump in the Finnish woods, which I took that picture on my last day there. And I was like, okay, done. Like it was okay to leave once I got it documented in the place that I made it. But I have been working more with figurative work in the last year, year and a half. When I was a painter, I did a lot of faces, I did a lot of bodies, and then I got a little more abstract and into the biomorphic shapes, which translated well into the wool. And now I'm allowing those pieces to come into fruition without forcing them. So sometimes I need just the bright and funky and, you know, wild pieces, but I'm really excited that I know I can access this very calm work as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can see so much of sort of the sides of you as a person too through that. I think it's really interesting to approach it that way. You know, I've gotten to have some conversations with you and thinking about that this is, it feels very much like personal work. I mean, you're doing what you like and enjoy, and it's fabulous to see that. Speaking of which, I do have to point out, I particularly enjoy some earrings that she has made. She's got some on too. Yeah. So you don't just work very large scale, you can also do some
also work very, very small. So one of the things that I did almost every morning that I was in Finland is I made wet felted bracelets for all of my my cohorts there. And it was a lovely meditation. It's one of those things that actually works better if I don't look at it. So I was looking out this huge picture window in my studio out into the field and a frozen lake, and I would just make these bracelets in the morning as a way to get started. And it was also nice because then we looked like a little cult. Everybody was wearing their wool bracelets around.
So can you, for those who don't know, could you describe the difference between wet felting and needle felting?
Sure. So wet felting is, again, it's a very, very ancient method of making textile. You use wool that's been cleaned, hopefully, some sort of change in pH, which can be soap. In Mongolia, they use yak urine actually on their yurts as a way to change the pH because they don't have enough soap to make those big pieces. You want a change in temperature, so usually you start with a warmer water, and then agitation. So those fibers have got scales on them, and those scales want to interlap. And so when you heat it up and you do that change of pH, it opens them up, and then you get them to combine. I always have to remind my students that while you're felting, you're not shrinking. It's not a molecular magic trick. You are taking out the air in between the fiber, right? So the other way to do that is how I make most of my sculpture, which is through needle felting. And these needles are, they're for industry, which is why they're not ergonomically fantastic for our hands, but they have little notches on them. And it's like having a 7 and a fiber right here, and the top fiber is pushed into the bottom fiber. And you do that hundreds and thousands of times where it's actually a very meditative process. And I love it, the noise of it. I love the feel of it. As you're meditating, you have to be present, because otherwise you're going to stab yourself with this very, very pointy needle. But you can still let your mind go because it's so slow. So you can't make, unless you're doing detail work towards the end, there's not a whole lot of decision making as you go. And so to me, it's just the most joyous process. It's also fabulous for beginners. So it's hard to mess up felting. It can be done.
I do love a good art medium you can't mess up. So I know that do you have available a sample on your setup to show sort of
for some needle felting?
The process of yeah. If you've got that available on hand.
I do. So I have got some of the same wool that I use. This is actually a quilt batting that I get from a company in Boston that sources a mill from Pennsylvania. So this wool has been taken off the sheep. It's been cleaned. It does not smell like sheep. It does smell like wool. And so what I'm going to do is start by rolling it up tight and actually getting some of the air out without doing anything. And then I'm going to take my felting needle, which, oh, there we go. I lost my camera.
There we go.
There we go. So you can see it's flat on 3 sides. So it's triangular. And on each one of those corners where the sides meet up, there's little notches. So again, that's the 7 that I was talking about. And then I'm just going to stab it and roll it and stab it and roll it and get it to hold together.
It makes a great sound too.
Great sound. I had the honor of being the first visiting artist at St. Albans Upper School in their art classes, and to have a dozen teenage boys all sitting around making this noise, and they were very quiet. It was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So I just looked up at the camera. I could have poked myself really hard. I'm gonna keep my eye on the prize here. So I haven't done a whole lot, but it's already starting to hold together. So, so I would keep, like your earrings, I would keep smoothing that out. And then you can make it as dense or as fluffy as you want. There's no wrong way to do that.
I'm so sorry. I think I pinned the video rather than spotlighting the video. So
Okay.
perhaps not everyone got a chance to see that, but
Okay.
if you can just stab it a couple more times.
Sure.
For messaging me. Sorry about that, everyone.
Yeah. I'm not paying attention either. Sorry.
It's Zoom, you know, sometimes the details are quite hard, so
Yes.
to keep track of as you talk, but I
We
appreciate
are all learning. Yeah, we're all learning.
Fabulous. Yeah, it's process is really enticing for someone like me who I very much appreciate all things fiber. I think like weaving has some of the same meditative qualities.
Mm-hmm.
Knitting, all of that. I think it's really a beautiful way to make something and sort of be calming at the same time.
It is. It is.
So I'd like at this time to open this up for questions.
Sure.
So for everyone at home watching, you can either type up a question and send that in the chat, or you can unmute yourself or raise your hand and use the raise hand feature, and I can call on you or unmute you there. So would love
And
to
if there's anything you want to see closer that's behind me, almost everything is on my website, but it is not, you can't tell the scale until it's actually in front of you.
And I should mention that a lot of these works are for sale. So if you're looking to add some soft sculpture to your collection, I did at the top of the chat add a link to the Dropbox so you can look at some of the works there. There are prices included on the ones for sale, her website, and also our email address so that we can connect you both, or you can reach out to her directly from her website. All right. Anybody have any questions? Well, while people are thinking,
Okay.
I think it would be lovely to see your potato because I've seen it, and I think it's just the humor that we all need, I think, these days.
So I have been working with my first web student, and she is making a frog. And so I was showing her, you know, the basic shape and then how to attach the legs. So this was all white, and I thought, that's not a frog, that's a potato. He's got a little potato butt. And, you know, he's growing like all the stuff that's in my pantry right now. My onions are doing amazing things for my garden. So just a little fun. I'm having a really hard time making serious work right now. So to be able to make some jewelry, to make something a little more comical that I may or may not put on my website as a serious artist, but still helping me sort of negotiate this time because I want to make something.
Yeah. We have some questions coming through, actually. I
Okay.
would love to keep talking about the potato always, but these are
Okay.
really great questions.
Okay.
So do you always hold single needles by hand, or do you use a multi-needle holder tool? Why or why not?
Yeah, I have a couple. So this is my favorite right now. It's actually, oh, here, I'll go this way.
Okay, thanks.
So this is a cabinet knob, and the instructor, the head art teacher at St. Albans actually has a laser cutter. And so we cut these discs so that we could make multi-needle holders for everybody, which is fabulous. I have my Clover brand, which is a 2 or 3 needle holder. I love this for detail work. And then I bought this aluminum holder, which will hold 6, but I like the spacing at 3. So those are my 3 main. And then for detail work, I still go back to a single needle.
Great, fabulous. So like any other art medium, there's a million accessories you can buy. 5,000 ways to go broke, you know?
Yeah. The nice thing about the wool is fairly inexpensive to buy. So I can get a pound of the core wool for I think it's up to $12.50 now. So I can get a whole lot of it. The dyed wool is at varying costs depending on which country it's coming from, how it's been processed, how it's been dyed, all of that. So that can definitely start to raise up. But the needles themselves are usually not more than $1 a piece. And beginners will break them more at the beginning, for sure. And I break mine when I am not paying attention to my work surface and I just rush my hand over it and they snap pretty good. But in terms of starter material, there's not a whole lot of cost to get started, which is how it gets you.
We have another question, which is from Eileen. As someone who used to do needle felting in 2 dimensions, I've tried sculptural work and it always looks like 2 dimensions anyway. Like when I try to add a face, the back of the head flattens. How do you keep your work 3-dimensional?
Okay, so part of that is just if you're working in 3 dimensions, you're used to looking flat this way. And so part of what you need to do is like bring it up in front of your face and have it like once you can get it big enough so that it's something you can hold, actually hold it. You might end up poking yourself a little bit more, or bring your chair down to your surface so that you are more level here, and then just keep turning and keep turning and keep turning. Even when I'm making a face, I will keep turning the piece so that I'm always seeing the contour. And that also helps me build something a little more recognizable. So with this one right here, you know, if I'm looking here and I'm adding more wool, I need to also be aware of like not making the head flat and keep turning it and keep turning it. So being able to recognize where the contour lines are is always helpful. And just add,
I was gonna say, I can see using a lazy Susan might even be helpful, right?
Yeah.
Easily spin it all around.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope that's helpful.
We have another question. How is the color added? Do you dye the wool or do you?
Yeah. So I used to buy a lot of my wool already pre-colored. There's a fabulous company in Italy called Dyeing House Gallery. And I started working with them while they were sort of new and I was sort of new. And so they sent me a lot of product. And it's what I use for my beginners because they have like 80 colors. So it's really hard to go wrong. It's always consistent. It's a winning wool. It's a very short fiber, so it needle felts very fast and very well. Most of my colors, you can tell from the flowers over here, they have a really nice gradient from one color to the next. And so I actually do my own dyeing now, and I do it in small batches, and I do it in the microwave. And so I can make as much as I need for a single project. And microwave dyeing, you only do it with wool, you can't do it with silk. But I can get most of the colors that I need pretty quickly, and it only takes, the actual cook time is about 6 minutes, and then you have to let it sit overnight, rinse it out. So
thank you.
yeah.
Well, we are at 4:30 now, so we'll be closing out, but I want to remind everybody that I popped those links up into the top of the chat. So please bookmark those and feel free to contact us, visualarts@strathmore.org. I can put you in touch with Shana, or you can look at her website. Also, check her out on Instagram. If you search her name, it's her first name _ last name. So it would be really lovely to connect with everybody if you have those questions. Sorry, I had one more question pop through, so let's get this one,
okay,
and then we'll wrap it up. So, is the round one behind you a ball that you cut in half like a geode? I think this might be.
Are we talking about this one right here?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. So no, is the short answer. This is a pretty solid form, and it's all wool. There's no other structure in here, and so yeah, you don't usually get to see the back of this piece, but it is actually built out and then decorated. So I have never actually tried the geode method, because you can build out color on the inside all the way out and then slice it in half. I've never done that, so maybe today, maybe later, who knows?
Yeah. So somebody did mention that they couldn't see the links. I popped them in before we started the session, so I just popped them back in the chat. Definitely feel free to check those out. So I want to thank everyone for joining us, but I also really want to thank you, Shana, for joining us. It's really lovely to see you virtually, and for those who are interested in her work, we will be hosting Shana's work soon at Strathmore. So keep an eye on our website for further details on that, and we hope to see everyone in person soon.
Okay, thank you guys so much. We'll see ya.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.